when we look at the life path, we always start with the present because the present is always going to be our reference. It's going to be our start position, and from there we're going to look at whatever's around it. Your life path both extends to the past and to the future. Right now we're going to connect to the past. So when you look at the person, you can see the past as a pathway that leads away from the person. Right now, as I see it, the person will be standing, and then I look towards their past, which is to the rear of them. If you see them facing the other way, then the past will also be to the rear of them. It just depends on your perspective and how you want to see it. You can also see the person facing you or look from the top or so. We're going to have different perspectives on it, and this is all dependent on you. So the first thing we want to do is we want to actually represent the past in a certain way. We want to get a way that we can correlate that to time, or to, because we reference our lives in years. We have a reference to how old we are now, to when something else has happened, to how old we were at the time, or how long ago it was. So we really want to have a ability to get that information, and we want to then have some way to reference it to get to it. The first thing we can do is we can represent the time as the start of life, which is in the past is going to be at 0, and then it's going to go up to however old we now. You can shift the person then on that timeline if you know how old they are. If you don't really know how old they are, you can reference the age. If they're normally an adult, they'll be older than 18 or 20 years old, and you can always safely say that 0 to that age of 20 or 18 is going to be in the past if they're no longer a teenager. Typically, there's not really a lot of teenagers we'll do readings with. This is normally more of a exclusive kind of event. It doesn't happen a lot. So for that reason, most people will really be have 20 years behind them or around that age. So the other way you can do this is see it as a clock. A clock is a very versatile object to use because we have 12 dials on it, and those 12 dials can represent months of the year. They can represent different years. They can also represent hours or minutes. I don't really believe you'll use hours and minutes so much, but if that comes up where a specific event happened, you can see it as that. The nice part of using a clock is that if you use it for, say, the last 6 months or the next year, which we'll get to the future just now, but if you want to look over the last couple of months, say for instance there's a persisting situation, you can then ask, well, how long ago did this start? You can then ask your clock to then count back until when it started. So say for instance a person's got a period of sadness, or there's some events that are happening that they don't know, you can then trace it back for say 3 months or 6 months or 4 months and see, okay, well, and you can say to them, listen, this period that you and currently started about 4 months ago, and then that person can then use that information to see, well, was there something that happened? Is there a person in their life that maybe at that point in time had an event or some kind of a situation around them? So then that would then be able to point them in the direction of, okay, well, when did this happen? So they can gauge, okay, well, why is this happening right now? And they can get an idea of when this started, so that they can realistically say, well, who's involved, or what are the events that kind of shaped this up, so that they can make changes, that they can actually find a way to move on from there. Okay, another way to represent time would be something like a flip clock. It's something that is a little bit more old style, but you can also use specific numbers to form a date. The other ones that I thought of would be to use a calendar page, or you can use like the date and time. You can use a little corner computer clock if you wanted to. So anything that you can visually represent the time, the date and time with, you can use. So this is just another example. but really it's important that you find something that you really resonate with, and this is going to be, something that's the most power to you, is to have something that you really feel is representative of who you are. When we look into the past, it is going to be a good idea to see what stands out. I've located 2 times, 12 and 29. 29 is the age where a lot of things change for people, and 12 years old is where you have a formative period, same as before 6. And so there's no mistake that the markers are there. When we go back in someone's life and we see, okay, there's 2 ways of doing it. First, we can go back and see if there's an event that impacted them, and we can say, okay, well, there's a marker or there's something that stands out around a certain age. We can then ask what that age is, see a number for it, or see an age for it, or feel into it. I generally kind of have this knowing sense of this, and I kind of know that the age is around this age or that age, and this is something that the person can then contemplate afterwards. They can make notes of it. You can also, it's a good idea to record all your sessions, that people can listen to the recording afterwards, that they have something to reference to in future. So this would be a way that you can see, okay, well, there's like an age that was really relevant. The other thing is that if you have a question, say for instance you have a situation that is now prevalent, and you want to see, okay, well, when did this start? When was the age that this went wrong, or that this situation evolved? And for relationships, this is really around 12 to 14 years old for me, and this is you can say, okay, well, the current relationship trend where someone doesn't really do well with relationships, well, that started at, say, a certain age where the person had certain ideas. Okay, then the next part of it is to explore around that point. What happened? What's the events that was shaping up? Who are the people that were involved around that time? So this is something that you can look at and consider. So you can be around that time for that event, and then it's like any normal reading where you then get information from images around that time, from people around that time. You can look at the energetic connection between this person and someone else, which we'll still get to in relationship readings, but ultimately you really explore around that time and really want to see what time it was in their life, what happened, who was involved, and then you can kind of build a profile and have a look around and give them some clarity around the situation.